As the Turkish general election campaign enters its final stretch, President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, whose role is supposed to be impartial according to the constitution, has intensified his partisan efforts in favor of the ruling Justice and Development Party, AK Party, and has been using his endless rallies, now up to at least 3 a day, to negate the main opposition parties. Successive public surveys recently conducted by various polling companies for the June 7 parliamentary elections have revealed that expected voting patterns for the ruling AK party have fallen below 40%. In an apparent move to increase public support for the ruling party, Erdoğan, a founding leader of the AK party who was elected president on August 10, 2014, has started to hold at least 3 public meetings a day, sometimes under the guise of inauguration ceremonies, as polling day draws closer. During his public meetings, Erdoğan has been calling on supporters at almost every event he attends to vote for a new constitution in the parliamentary elections, as he is intensely keen for the AK party to gain a large enough majority in parliament to enable it to unilaterally replace the constitution and the current parliamentary system with a presidential one. Erdoğan has also spent a huge part of the last 3 weeks negating the main opposition parties by clearly violating the current constitution. Article 103 of the Constitution, which regulates the president's oath-taking, clearly states that the president must assure the public that he will remain impartial during the course of his duties. Today's Zaman analyzed Erdoğan's schedule in the last 20 days, between May 8 and 28. Attending the general meeting of the Turkish Union of Agricultural Chambers, TZOB, in Ankara on May 8, Erdoğan expressed his support for the presidential system, saying that he supports the system because he believes establishing it will be beneficial for Turkey. Speaking during a large-scale inauguration ceremony held in the western province of Izmir on May 9, Erdoğan criticized the Republican People's People, CHP, over the poor services of the municipalities being run by the main opposition party, while promoting the municipal services being provided by the AK party-run municipalities in other cities. Izmir municipality is currently being run by the CHP. Erdoğan also targeted the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, HDP, by accusing the party of using his Kurdish brothers according to its interests. In addition to domestic efforts, Erdoğan has been putting his private jet to good use by holding some public meetings abroad in a bid to gain the votes of Turkish expats living in foreign countries, as those expats, like in many countries, can also vote in a general election. In a speech in Karlsruhe, southwest Germany, on May 10, Erdoğan again revealed his bias for the AK party. Once again directly criticizing the HDP, which has a great deal of support from ethnic Kurds in Germany, Erdoğan urged Turkish citizens across Germany not to believe the HDP, reflecting the AK party's desire to prevent the HDP from passing the 10% threshold needed to secure representation in parliament. Erdoğan drew a connection between the HDP and the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, by saying of the HDP, "Their love is fake, don't believe it. They cannot love. Can those who kill people feel love?" The Turkish president repeated the same rhetoric in another meeting he held that day in Hasselt, Belgium. The HDP has frequently been the target of harsh criticism by Erdoğan and other ruling party officials in a bid to prevent the upcoming party from gaining more support from voters, because the HDP has a critical significance in the approaching election. If the pro-Kurdish party, whose deputies previously ran as independent candidates to circumvent the 10% election threshold imposed by the junta regime of the September 12, 1980 coup, is able to surpass the threshold in this election, the number of ruling AK party seats in parliament will automatically fall. In other words, should HDP successfully pass the threshold, the AK party would be unlikely to secure a big enough parliamentary majority to comfortably press for constitutional changes that would pave the way for the presidential system so keenly sought by Erdoğan. On May 11, Erdoğan attended 2 separate inauguration ceremonies in the Black Sea provinces of Rize and Trabzon. During his Rize speech, Erdoğan criticized the CHP and the HDP and called on those who attended the event to give a good lesson to them on June 7. Targeting the HDP, Erdoğan claimed that the party has nothing to do with religion, arguing that the Kurdish people should not vote for this party because his Kurdish brothers are religious people. With these remarks, Erdoğan apparently aimed to highlight the religious and conservative side of the ruling party and indirectly call on Kurds to vote for the ruling AK party instead of the HDP. Erdoğan, AK party use state resources, while opposition conducts election campaigns with limited funds. In the same speech, Erdoğan also said that no one can prevent him from holding public meetings ahead of the elections, because he is the first Turkish president to be elected by a public vote. Erdoğan earlier argued that he has the right to use state resources to conduct campaign rallies across Turkey ahead of the elections. Speaking during a rally in Diyarbakır province on May 2, Erdoğan said, "Are you asking with whose money I am holding rallies? I am holding them with state money. It is my legal right. I am standing here as the president of this country. I am here after I took 52% of the vote," referring to earlier criticism from HDP leader Selahattin Demirtas. While the other opposition parties have been conducting their election campaigns with limited resources, with the HDP lacking any funds allocated by the state for its election campaign due to restrictions related to the 10% threshold, both Erdoğan and the ruling party enjoy the benefit of the state's resources to boost their electoral campaign. Erdoğan didn't hold any public meeting in Turkey on May 13 because he visited Albania. But that didn't stop him from acting as a propagandist for the ruling party. Speaking to a group of pro-government journalists on a plane while returning from his Albania visit, Erdoğan criticized the election campaigns of the CHP, the HDP, and the opposition Nationalist Movement Party, MHP, by saying that pledges included in opposition parties' campaigns are baseless and impracticable. Addressing the public again on the pretext of an inauguration ceremony in the eastern province of Van on May 14, Erdoğan accused the HDP of putting pressure on the public in predominantly Kurdish eastern and southeastern regions to ensure their election vote went to the pro-Kurdish party. He said people should not change the party they will vote for due to the pressure put on them, calling the HDP as a party which is being supported by terrorism, referring to the outlawed PKK organization. Erdoğan says no one can prevent him from speaking. Opposition parties filed accusations in May with the Supreme Election Board, YSK, saying that Erdoğan had failed in his obligation as president to stay above party politics. However, Turkey's election board on May 15 rejected accusations that Erdoğan violated the constitution by publicly backing the ruling party ahead of the June polls. Addressing the public again in an inauguration ceremony held in the central Anatolian province of Kırıkkale on May 15, Erdoğan declared at a gathering of supporters ahead of the election that no complaints, wherever they might be submitted, would silence him. Some parties are applying to the YSK. It doesn't matter where you apply, you cannot take me away from rallies, you cannot silence me, he said. After his rally in Kırıkkale, Erdoğan traveled to the eastern province of Erzincan to hold another public meeting where he repeated his Kırıkkale remarks. Holding 3 separate public meetings on various pretexts, Erdoğan continued to make the propaganda of the ruling party in 3 different locations in Istanbul on May 16. In his speech delivered during an inauguration ceremony for a new building of the Sultangazi municipality on May 16, Erdoğan once more requested that the public vote for the establishment of the president system in the country. Since the AK party is the only party pushing for that, Erdoğan was referring to that party. On May 17, Erdoğan visited the central Anatolian province of Kayseri to attend yet another inauguration ceremony. During his speech in Kayseri, Erdoğan targeted the CHP, the HDP, and some critical media outlets, repeating that he believes that the Turkish nation will give a good lesson to those opposition parties in the elections. During his public rally in the Black Sea province of Samsun on May 18, Erdoğan asked those in attendance whether they will say yes to New Turkey, new constitution, and the presidential system in the elections, clearly asking them to vote for the ruling party. On May 19, Erdoğan took the chance to address young people on the occasion of the Ataturk commemoration and Youth and Sports Day, and then spoke at an inauguration ceremony in Ankara on the same day. Erdoğan did not hold a public meeting on May 20 because he went to Bosnia-Herzegovina, but he made up for it the next day by attending two separate inauguration ceremonies in the central Anatolian provinces of Ankara and Adıyaman. During his public speech in Adıyaman, Erdoğan openly defied the opposition parties, saying whatever they did to prevent him from holding public meetings won't be enough to stop him from doing so. Some apply to the YSK and say the president should not hold public rallies. Why should I not hold those rallies? Since when have you opposition parties started to impose a speaking ban for the president? The main opposition applied to it YSK, it was refused. The MHP applied, it was also returned. The HDP applied 2 times successively, it received 2 refusals from the YSK. Despite all these, I am now with the public. 3 rallies a day. From May 22, Erdoğan decided to increase the pressure and began to hold 3 rallies in different provinces a day. The president spoke during a ceremony held by the Education Ministry in Ankara that morning, then he attended an inauguration ceremony alongside Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu in the Black Sea province of Ordu, before lastly attending another inauguration ceremony in the southern province of Kahramanmaraş that afternoon. He spoke in Istanbul on the afternoon of May 23 and again in the southern province of Antalya in another inauguration ceremony a few hours later. During his speech in Antalya, Erdoğan accused all the opposition parties of plotting against the ruling party ahead of the elections. Turkey has been experiencing a very interesting process. All the parties and all the organizations have cooperated against one political party, AK party. How dirty a cooperation it is, Erdoğan said. During a large-scale rally held in the southeastern province of Şanlıurfa on May 24, Erdoğan lashed out at the CHP and the HDP. He once again made fun of pledges given by the opposition parties as part of their election campaign manifestos. On May 25, Erdoğan delivered 3 public speeches in 3 separate events in Istanbul. He first attended a meeting held at the Sinan Erdem Sports Hall during which he addressed tradesmen, then he attended a panel during which he praised the presidential system and asked for people's support to establish it. Finally, he spoke during a handover ceremony held in the Sultanbeyli district of Istanbul that same day. Similarly, on May 26, Erdoğan held 3 separate public speeches respectively in Istanbul, in the eastern province of Hakkari and then in Ankara. He again held 3 inauguration ceremonies in the Ankara, Yozgat, and Aydın provinces on May 27. Yesterday, Erdoğan continued his campaign with 3 more public meetings in the Ankara, Nevşehir, and Aksaray provinces. During his speech in Nevşehir, Erdoğan made publicly fun of HDP co-chair Demirtas. Recalling that Demirtas played an instrument and sang 2 songs during a live interview with CNN Turk's Ahmet Hakan on Wednesday night, Erdoğan called Demirtas a pop star. The president repeated his allegation that the HDP has been forcing local people in eastern and southeastern regions to vote for the HDP in the elections. To top it all, aside from his incessant public speeches, Erdoğan also spoke on some TV shows aired on pro-government TV channels, during which he also promoted the ruling party against the others. Meanwhile, columnist Tarhan Erdem in his article published in the Radical Daily on May 28 calculated that Erdoğan has asked the public to vote in favor of the AK party in the elections in more than 150 speeches held between December 1, 2014 and May 27. Erdem wrote that Erdoğan had also clearly stated the name of opposition parties that he asked the public not to vote for during his speeches and listed the reasons why those people should not vote for them. The columnist also revealed that all of those 150 speeches were broadcast live on 4 TV channels known for being close to the ruling party. The Turkish general election will be held on June 7. The stakes have never appeared to be so high.